will be protected by God.
And welcome back to Atreyu News. It is now Monday, December 4th of 2017, and the victories are really starting to pile up here. Supreme Court permits full enforcement of Trump travel ban. Fantastic news. Gonna keep winning. Handing the White House a huge judicial victory, the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday ruled in favor of President Trump's travel ban affecting residents of 6 majority Muslim countries. The justices said the policy can take full effect despite multiple legal challenges against it that haven't yet made their way through the legal system. And something tells me they're not gonna make it their way through the legal system, because we all know it's BS. The Supreme Court rules supreme. The ban applies to people from Syria, Chad, Iran, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. Lower courts have said people from those countries with a bona fide relationship with someone in the United States could not be prevented from entry. Grandparents and cousins were among the relatives courts said could not be excluded. Well, I guess that makes sense, considering they should have gone through a process to enter the country in the first place, so theoretically their relatives should not be dangerous. I suppose time will tell. The 9-member High Court said in 2 one-page orders late Monday afternoon that lower court rulings that partially block the ban should be put on hold while appeals courts in Richmond, Virginia and San Francisco take up the case. Liberal-leaning justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor said they would have left the lower court orders in place. The justices offered no explanation. Typical liberal in this day and age. I think it's important that it's not so much the liberals that I'm trying to demonize. They demonize themselves by allowing their party to be hijacked by communists. The liberals of the past, like a Thomas Jefferson, a real liberal, those people do not exist anymore. The Democratic Party, as we know, no longer exists. It has been replaced by a shadow government controlled by a communist ideology. They're dangerous, 100%. And this, right here, no explanation from Supreme Court liberal judges, gives testament to the fact. Because they know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't care. They have an alternative agenda. But the administration had said that blocking the full ban was causing irreparable harm because the policy is based on legitimate national security and foreign policy concerns. Both courts are scheduled to hear arguments in those cases this week. So in other words, leftist-leaning judges on the Supreme Court and across the country wish to stand against this. Unlikely to happen though, because whatever the Supreme Court says typically stays. The odds of the Supreme Court overturning a decision are, less than 1%. So the momentum is on our side. Let's listen to the talking heads over at Fox News.
What appears to be a big victory for the President of the United States. I'm not talking tax cuts. I'm talking from the Supreme Court moments ago, allowing him to fully enforce a ban on travel to the United States by residents of 6 largely Muslim countries. The judge is saying in this order that the policy can take full effect even as legal challenges against it are going through a variety of courts pretty much across the country. Now, the ban applies to travelers from Chad, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. Lower courts have, on and off said this goes too far, that this is racist, that this is targeting people on the basis of their religion. We do know that Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor have left the lower court orders in place. The others presumably did not, so that would appear to be a 7-2 decision.
And like I had discussed in the last video, the very real fact that not even one Democrat got behind the tax bill to lower taxes for the American people, we can only come to one conclusion, that they're deliberately trying to destroy America. Therefore, Trump just came out and endorsed Roy Moore fully, because he knows what's at stake here. He actually tweeted the same thing I was talking about, how the Democrats don't want to be involved in making America great again. But check this out.
has fully endorsed Roy Moore, and here's how he explained it this way in a tweet earlier this morning, Neil. The president wrote, and I quote here, "Democrats' refusal to give even one vote for massive tax cuts is why we need Republican Roy Moore to win in Alabama. We need his vote on stopping crime, illegal immigration." He went on to list a handful of other issues, and the president finished up by saying, "No to Jones, a Pelosi-Schumer puppet." In a statement, a celebratory Moore said the following, quote, "President Trump knows that the future of his conservative agenda in Congress hinges on this election." He went on to say, "We had a good conversation over the phone today and are working together towards conservative victory on December 12th. Now, the president's full embrace today of Roy Moore comes as other Republicans are starting to walk back some of the criticism that they had on Moore. For example, Ted Cruz, who last month said he couldn't urge people in Alabama to vote for Moore, and Mitch McConnell, who said that Roy Moore should drop out of the race, since in the last few days have taken a different tact. Listen here.
This is an issue that the voters have in front of them, and they'll make a decision. I think we need to respect the will of the voters.
We're going to let the people of Alabama decide a week from Tuesday who they want to send to the Senate, and then we'll address the matter appropriately.
Neil, President Trump won Alabama in 2016 by 28 points, some 300,000 votes. It is a deep, deep, deep red state, as you know. Right?
Now, keep in mind, upwards of 70% of Republicans in Roy Moore's state believe that the media has a bias against them with the sexual allegations. And all of it is based on a yearbook that doesn't even match Roy Moore's signature. So the odds of him being innocent of the crimes that they're trying to push on him are pretty damn good, considering the liberals have been caught lying time and time and time again. In fact, I don't even remember the last time they told the truth. Point being, like I had discussed before, their backs are against the ropes. We must crush the Democrats, for they no longer are liberals, they're communists. We must crush them, and here is our chance. Get your butt out there and vote for Roy Moore, and we are going to have the wall, and we are going to have the things that Trump promised. The votes will make it true. And a little bit more of the implosion of the Democratic Party as we know it. Breaking: former congressman sentenced to 5 years in prison. Oh, you gotta love it. It's funny, you think the Democrats would stop, but it appears they're too stupid to realize their actions and the consequences for their actions. Very strange to watch, but quite enjoyable, obviously. Former Representative Corrine Brown has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Former Northeast Florida Democratic Congresswoman Corrine Brown has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Her two co-defendants, Brown's former chief of staff Ronnie Simmons and the president of the sham charity they funneled money through, Carla Wiley, have been sentenced as well. Simmons to 4 years and Wiley to 1 year and 9 months. All three had been hoping to avoid any time in prison. Yeah, I bet you were. The judge is allowing the co-defendants to voluntarily surrender for their prison term at a date to be determined by the Bureau of Prisons, but no earlier than January 8th. Until then, the travel of Simmons and Wiley is restricted to Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., and Brown is restricted to the Middle District of Florida unless they get approved from pretrial officers. They will also surrender their passports and will report to pretrial services. The government did not object to any of these. WOKV has been following this case since early last year, when Wiley pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and agreed to cooperate with the government as they continued to build their case. In July, Brown and Simmons were indicted, Brown on 22 charges and Simmons on 19. Earlier this year, Simmons pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud and theft of government funds, and also agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. Brown then faced trial in May and was convicted on 18 charges, including conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, aiding and abetting mail fraud, aiding and abetting wire fraud, scheme to conceal material facts, corrupt endeavor to obstruct and impede the due administration of Internal Revenue Law, and filing false tax returns. Must have been Russia, though, right? Must have been. According to the case that was presented, the trio used Wiley's organization, One Door for Education. That's funny, that's what they called it. And then they stole money One Door for Education, to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, which donors believe would go towards charitable use, and instead spent the money on personal expenses and lavish events. That sounds pretty typical to me. Just think of the good that could have been done with that money, says Judge Timothy Corrigan, adding that the defendants systematically looted the funds. It's starting to sound like the mayor of Detroit all over again. Wiley founded the organization with good intentions, but it was essentially dormant until Simmons, her boyfriend at the time, took control. Wiley's theft comes through online transfers from One Door's bank account, which were conducted separately from the scheme involving Brown and Simmons. Corrigan says there was no indications Wiley would have stopped had she had not been caught. Well, that's typical politicians, but the Democrats in particular, they're like drug addicts. Money and power, regardless of how much they have, regardless of how much crack you give a crack addict, it is never enough. They're drug addicts. And since the laws of power that I've been studying, the 48 laws of power, have been so useful for my personal life, so shall it be our sword. Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you are helping the drowning man, but you are only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and the fortunate instead. Republicans and people on the right, Trump supporters, we have to stick together. We're on a winning strategy. The momentum is with us. We have positive energy and God. The lefty Democrats have the exact mirror image of what we have. Cut off the fire starters or you will burn along with them. Get out and vote for Roy Moore, and we're going to have what Trump promised.
We're going to win. We're going to keep winning. We're going to win at military. We're going to win at trade. We're going to win at everything we do. We're going to win, win, win.